They say art is in the eye of the beholder, but what if your subject has no eyes? The nightmare-inducing alien is first seen in Giger's Necronom 4, emerged from the world of art and artists, so it only seems fitting that we have a story set within this kind of world. The new novel, Alien Perfect Organisms, gives us just that, along with the story of a cargo vessel's crew desperately tracking down an eccentric artist with a very particular admiration of the xenomorph creature. Perfect Organisms was written by Shaun Hamill, whose works include A Cosmology of Monsters, The Dissonance, and the upcoming Solomon Kane Suffer Witch. I'm very happy to have him here with me today. Shaun, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you because I absolutely love the book. As someone who has consumed just about all of the Alien novels that they've been releasing throughout the years, I was especially delighted with some of the connections to other stories that you reveal in yours. Some that were very unexpected. Some that maybe only like the really hardcore readers of the extended universe are going to immediately recognize. It did seem to me while reading this that you're very familiar with this whole universe. So I want to ask, what gravitated you to the world of Alien in the first place?
Well, it's interesting. I was born in the 80s, so I was not born yet when the original movie came out, and was only 3 when Aliens came out. So I first watched the movie. I rented it on VHS from my local Blockbuster when I was like 12 years old. My mom had sort of warned me, she kind of was permissive. She was like, you can rent whatever you want, but I've seen this one and it's pretty scary. So just be forewarned. Um, and so I watched it by myself at 2 in the morning. It was summer break, so I could stay up as late as I wanted. And I popped this movie in, and it was such a surreal experience. I don't know if you've ever had this where like it's just the right movie for just the right setting at just the right time in your life. Like I'd never seen anything quite like it. Like, on the old VHS, and I think even in newer transfers, the dialogue in the early scenes is almost inaudible, like when they're eating breakfast in the galley and you can't hear what they're saying, at least for the first couple of times you watch it. And then you start picking things out to the dreamlike atmosphere when they set down on LV-426 and they're exploring the derelict spacecraft and everything. And I was really surprised by just how quiet the movie was, but how it held my attention all the same. And like this building dread, and of course, because I had grown up long after the movie had come out, I knew about the iconic chestburster scene. And it was still, not shocking, but definitely upsetting, so it was really, it was like one of those formative, perfect experiences. And of course, I immediately went back to Blockbuster and read Aliens and Alien 3.
Oh yeah, you gotta.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as mom would take me back, I went back and I went right for it. And loved Aliens, wrestled with Alien 3. Of course, I have since come to love it very much. But it was. I understand why people were angry because James Cameron did such a good job of making you love those characters, and David Fincher, seems so determined to take the darkness of the original Alien worldview and just crank that up to 11. And I respect that as now, but as a kid, I was like, oh man, this is brutal. I don't know if I like this. But yeah, I realized that there were comic books and there were novels, which I found first. The first one I read was the Aliens versus Predator Prey, which was novelized from a Dark Horse comic by Steve and Stephanie Perry. And I loved that as well. And just sort of read all of the Alien stuff I could get my hands on. So I've been a fan for a long time. To to answer your question, I'd say it definitely, went underground for a little while. But with the when COVID hit and the RPG, the tabletop RPG from Free League was released, I had pre-ordered it. And when the book finally came, I think it was smack dab in the middle of COVID. And I just got like, as sort of a coping mechanism, I guess, I was like, you know what? I want to try and like consume all alien media I can. And I made this big Excel spreadsheet with like publication dates, trying to fit Alien Predator and Alien versus Predator stuff like all into like, one place. Comics, novels, short films, even the Jonesy storybook, whatever was available. And I haven't made good on the threat to consume all of it, but I got through a lot of it. And so like it's been a lifelong love affair, I guess, is a long way of saying it. I'm sorry. Maybe you could edit that down. I don't know.
Well, no, I mean, I'm curious actually, because you mentioned, the Gasca book, which I love, and as someone who couldn't figure out how to play an RPG to save his life, just the text alone, the world building alone of that work is exceptional. Possibly the best and firmest kind of encyclopedia of alien lore, basically. I am curious though. You mentioned all your interactions. Since it is so recent, were you able to watch the Alien Earth television show?
Yeah, I watched it week to week when it was coming on. I'm still not quite sure how I feel about it, but I watched it, and I'm generally a fan of Noah Hawley. I love Fargo very, very much. So but one of the interesting things about Alien for me is that past the original three, I think I've almost always wrestled with new alien media when it first hits, especially if it's a big swing, right? Like I remember seeing Resurrection for the first time and walking out of the theater just completely baffled by it. And I've since grown to love it, for all of its quirks and everything. I think that it's kind of amazing as this weird standalone thing. And, I felt the same way walking out of Prometheus. I was very confused and frustrated, and I've grown to love that movie. Covenant, I loved right off the bat, but that seems to be the exception rather than the rule. And of course, on social media, I see people bad mouthing that one all the time, and it's one of my very favorites. So who knows?
I had a feeling reading this, and that is something I want to get back to, but I definitely sensed that.
Good. I'm glad that came across.
But being an Alien fan throughout the formative years and ongoing, and kind of having it resurrected on its own, as you mentioned, during the pandemic, and now here we are in the year 2025, and you are an author of an Alien series book, the latest in the series of Alien novels. How does becoming an author of an Alien novel come to be? Like, did you reach out to Titan or Disney or whoever, saying, I have this idea, we should kind of go with it, or did they come to you, asking if you're interested in writing a story? What exactly is the process to that?
So I chased this job. So my first novel, A Cosmology of Monsters, came out in 2019, and it was published in the U.S. and Canada by Pantheon, which is an arm of Penguin Random House. But the UK version of the book was published by Titan. And, it just so happened that deal came together while I was in the midst of my, alien renaissance, where I was like, gathering up materials and just, inhaling alien media. So I just emailed my UK editor and asked, I was like, hey, you guys are publishing my book. I know you also do some licensed fiction, particularly Alien. Who would I talk to if I were interested in writing an Alien book? And he put me in touch with the series editor at the time, Steve Saffel, who is retired now. But Steve and I had a conversation for a while. We went back and forth. He asked me to send some pitches for novels, and he was interested in them. But before that conversation could get going too much further, we had to clear up some contract stuff with the publisher of my original novels, Pantheon, because there was a contract provision that they had right of refusal on my next novel. So we had to clarify, like, next original novel, not that I was free to do this project because it wouldn't interfere with the next original. And that took some time. And unfortunately, like, the opportunity moved on until I got it in writing for the contract for my second novel, The Dissonance. And once I had that in writing and as a contract, I went back to Titan and I was like, I've got it in writing. I am allowed to do this. Like, I wouldn't have started the conversation if I thought, it was going to be a problem, but it turned out to be. And so once I had it in writing, I went back to them, and they were quiet for a while because I think they'd already filled up the docket, with novels. But when Steve retired and Daquan Cadigan, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, became the series editor, he doubled back to me and asked to see my pitches again. And so I went over them with a fine-tooth comb, cleaned them up, made sure that their shirts were tucked in and everything, because it had been a couple of years. And I sent them, and he liked them, and he gave them to Fox/Disney, and they liked them. And so I was given the green light to write the book. But this was something I chased for a long time. I started the conversation in 2020, and I didn't get the job until almost the end of 2023. So it was like 3 years of back and forth. Like, I wanted the job. I think they were interested in having me do it. It was just a question of timing and contract, So this was a bucket list thing for me. It was something I really, really wanted to do.
Gosh, it seems almost like it's the world of Weyland-Yutani. We live and die by the contracts, which
Yeah,
is
very much
kind of very much a part of this story, and it is a unique story, involving this obsessed artist, and of course we do get more familiar elements that we become accustomed to. This story and the angle you take with this universe, as you mentioned, you had a few pitches, but how long was this one kind of in your mind, like from the time it's kind of just up there in your brain to the time that the pen hits the paper, or the keyboard, or the hands hit the keyboard? What made it something that wanted you to turn this into a story you wanted to tell?
Well, when I was invited, so when I started chasing the job, I didn't have a specific story in mind yet. Like, I just knew that I had loved the Dark Horse books and I was enjoying the new Titan books, and I really wanted to play in that sandbox. And once they asked for pitches, I started, I went back and I rewatched the special features on the, it was originally the DVD box set. Of course, I've got the Blu-ray box set, and I'm hoping someday they'll do a full 4K release of, all the movies in a big box set that I can buy. Even though physical media is definitely on the wane. But, watching the documentaries, especially the making of the original Alien, but also in Alien 3, the early filmed version, the Vincent Ward idea with the monks and, the religious aspect, which of course did end up in a changed version in the final film. All of that. And I read the Making of Alien, that terrific, big book that J.W. Rinsler, I think, wrote. And I really tried to get down to, like, brass tacks about what is it that I love so much about this world, this creature. Why is it so compelling to me, and what can I say about it that would be interesting to me as a writer, but also, like, maybe expand on some of the things that I really enjoyed about the movies and books that I read, like the ones that really spoke to me. And so the things that really started coming to the forefront were like I loved all of the, the little bits of interview about Giger, that made it into the DVD special features, and just his work, and which seemed fueled by just a dark majesty or dark wonder, which I think, informs the entirety of the original Alien. Like that film is dark wonder personified. And I really wanted to capture that. And the idea of the religious aspect too. I was raised religious. My father was a preacher when I was young. And I was really, interested in the religious experience, which is, the pulling back of the curtain and the sense that there is more beyond our world than what we understand, which I think the original film does really well. There are so many unanswered mysteries in the film. They've since been answered, like, how did that ship get there? What is the thing in the chair? Why doesn't it look human? Why is it so much bigger than the human beings? That the film doesn't answer. It just leaves you with. And it's almost like there's a little bit of cosmic horror in there too, right? Like cosmic horror is like the religious experience, but on the dark side. Like in religion, you find out there's more than you, and that's a good thing usually. And in cosmic horror, you find out that there is more than you, and it's so much more horrifying than you could possibly imagine. It's Stephen King once called the movie Lovecraft in Space. And I think that sums it up fairly well. And so I really wanted to like zero in on those aspects of the mythology. And so that's kind of how the story emerged. And there are two, as you mentioned, there are two narratives that are kind of playing back and forth in the novel. And one is this crew who've been hired to go, retrieve this artist who's disappeared to this quarantined planet. And the other half of the story is sort of the memoir by that artist. And I think both sides of that story very much spoke to my own like fascination with darkness, my own fears about financial solvency, and desperation under late capitalism, and like, how am I going to pay my bills next month? And the things we have to do to make ends meet sometimes, but also this idea of like questing after the darkness, right? And it's also in a way a novel about being a super fan of the alien. Like, how far are you willing to go? Like guys like you and me, right? Who are just like, can't let go of this world and this creature and just need to have more of it, however we can get it.
Well, yeah, and we have this central character, the Cynthia Goodwin, the captain of the Chariot, the cargo vessel, which I guess I should stress is not affiliated with Weyland-Yutani. The Chariot and her crew, they're independent contractors, kind of actively seeking out contracts from prospective employees who may not be so satisfied with Weyland-Yutani's services, maybe. But in specific reference to that character, what goes into the Cynthia Goodwin character? How does a character like this differ and the other characters in the fact that they're not associated with the company like we've seen many others?
Well, I wanted to create a situation where there was a little different than, say, the Nostromo, where like they are basically in the employ of this mega corporation. And one of the neat things that the role-playing game picked up on were the different players in the galaxy, the different like political factions, the different mega corporations like Seeks, and that are in competition with them. And I was interested in exploring, like, we've seen what happens to the people who basically are working for the company, especially in the Ripley trilogy, right? Like just how they are, and these are the people who are under the supposedly safe auspices, cover of Weyland-Yutani, right? Like they're supposed to be their employees, their wards. So how much worse is it for the people who can't even get that? Like supposedly they have more freedom, but like what they also have is a much less secure, livelihood. And I was interested in kind of exploring that a little bit, but also I needed to create a situation where the characters would agree to take this job without being ordered there by the company, because that tends to be like that at this point is almost the cliche, right? Which is Wayland Yutani told us to go here, right? So it's like, well, and they still have a part to play in the story, but we're coming at it from a slightly different angle this time, I guess.
Well, yeah, in this one we have kind of the elusive, reclusive billionaire Roman Fade, who kind of sends them on this journey to find his lover Corinth Bloch. Also, a key character in this story, one that I found very interesting, and he's in this novel. He's well known all throughout the galaxy, the universe, the Middle Heavens, as this famous artist. I think there is a part of the book where he's described as the Bosch of the Middle Heavens. How is this character developed?
He was very much inspired by, and I think this is where the Alien Covenant comes in, right? Because one of the things I thought was so interesting about that movie is the influences at play there. There's the Wagner opera, there's this, but also with Prometheus, you get into the biblical, creation story, the search for God, the search for meaning, and like making literal the characters asking the questions that maybe the audience has wondered about, since the original movie, and like bringing those into the main text of the story. And so I was really interested in exploring that in a religious, aspect. Like I love the paintings of Bosch, Hieronymus Bosch, and I was, I love the work of Giger, and I was really interested in the idea of an artist who, gets a glimpse at a form of xenomorph, right? And like it sends his life on this path, and it's something that he can never shake, and it sort of becomes a story about obsession, his story. But I think there's also like, there's unresolved trauma and grief tied up in there, and this need for meaning, and this idea that if you can just make sense of this thing, then all the rest of it falls into place as well. And I was really interested in how his narrative might influence Captain Goodwin, who is our nominal hero, who is really struggling with her own mental health, and struggling with ways to go forward, and who is plagued by dark dreams and just a real pessimism, and sort of pairing that, something in him speaks to her. And I was really interested in how that battle for her soul, and his soul for that matter, could play out, even though these two characters are not together in time and space, how their stories are sort of informing and bouncing off of each other, I thought would be really interesting to me, because they're coming at this this creature, this world, the way that I think I do. They're both parts of me, I think, sort of in conversation with one another.
Yeah, it seemed in a way that they felt to me almost like these kindred spirits, almost connected by, well, as you mentioned, dreams, which is another aspect of this story. You tap into that with the characters here. The dreams actually they play a very important part, and we suspect the alien may have an influence on these dreamers. Did you draw from any of your own dreams or nightmares, let's say, when writing this book?
Not really. Unfortunately, like my dream life is not very interesting. I don't usually remember my dreams. I don't have frequent nightmares. And as somebody who really needs his sleep to be anything resembling a decent human being, I appreciate that. Like if I don't get regular sleep, I just become a monster. Um, so I, but I've always been interested in, again, like in, in Judeo-Christian scriptures, there are characters finding things through dream all the time. And, there is that, and it may have been a joke, but, there's that, and the DVD special features for the original Alien, Dan O'Bannon, I think, is talking about meeting Giger and how Giger offers him opium, and says that he takes it to, like tone down his own dreams. And I think part of me has always been jealous of people whose minds work that way, because for me to get to that sort of imagery, like requires like a real effort of imagination. I really have to push hard. I have to think hard. I have to absorb a lot of other art by great artists and sort of try to create a stew that would, that's not the part of art that comes easy to me. And I think when I see it, it really, coming from other artists and seeming to come so naturally as it did in the case of Giger, where it's like, this is just who he is and how his brain works. I have a real jealousy of that because I wish that I had that, so I think it's more like wish fulfillment, of wishing that I had these dreams or this sense of something above and beyond. Like, I think that's part of why I'm so drawn to horror fiction, and cosmic horror in particular, is like that religious upbringing. I really do want that dark wonder. I want to see behind the curtain. And of course, that's not how my life works. Unfortunately, I wish it was.
Well, that is something I wanted to talk about, because Titan, they sent me this book early. It was supposed to be released at the end of October, but they pushed it back a little bit, which is unfortunate, because I read this right around Halloween. And it's kind of a perfect Halloween book, because I will say there are actually quite a few frightening moments in this book.
Oh, thank you.
And with a creature that's so familiar to so many people like myself and fans all over. What is the challenge in doing that, and like writing a story that's able to give the reader a scary experience? Like, how do you map something like that out?
It was hard. That was the other thing I did not really think through before I took the job of writing an alien novel. So this is the first licensed fiction I've written. I've since written another novel that comes out in a few months for the character Solomon Kane. It's created by Robert E. Howard, who also created Conan the Barbarian. And that was a little bit easier to conceptualize because the Robert E. Howard hero is sort of an archetype, and you just put him in a different situation and set him loose, right? Whereas the Xenomorph, the alien, part of what makes any monster scary is not knowing what it is and what it can do, right? And once you've sort of codified all those things, it gets a lot trickier to make it scary. And so that was really the challenge when writing this book, was like, okay, how do I restore the majesty of this creature, and the sheer terror of it, when there are video games I have played and enjoyed where they're just cannon fodder, where you're a colonial marine or a predator, and you just mow down xenomorph after xenomorph, with a smart gun or a spear or whatever. And so that was really tricky. And some of the other Titan books have done really cool stuff with it. I think different writers find different ways to bring it, back to its status as like cosmic monster. For me, it was I think part of it was trying to write, like, part of it was writing from a point of view of characters who don't already know what this is, and that helped. Like, I tried to write this in such a way that my dad, who I think has seen the first couple of movies but does not remember them well, could read the novel and understand and enjoy it because the characters are discovering things about this at the same pace that he, the reader, is, right? I think that was part of it. But second of all, it was putting them in a situation where the creature is often at the periphery, and you see the effects of what it's done, but not the creature itself until very late in the novel. But also putting the characters in a situation where they are severely underpowered against it. You know, there's never a turn the tables moment with a bunch of guns, you know, which those can be terrific fun too. I mean, I love aliens as much as the next guy, right? But putting them in a situation where like they are outmatched, you know, at every turn, and in a desperate situation. And I think that the desperate situation, that was one thing that I really learned from Colony War. Yeah, there's a section of that novel where I believe the characters are stuck in kind of a control tower, and they're trying to get down to the ground, and they've got a makeshift rope, but like I don't remember the specifics because I read the book when it came out, I think 3 years ago at this point. But I remember like taking note and being like, this is a really good use of like putting, you know, your characters in a really tight spot and creating that tension. So that was what I tried to do. And it's really gratifying to hear you say that, you know, this very familiar monster was still able to frighten you. I think also having permission to play in the Prometheus Covenant sandbox as well helped broaden the scope of what I got to do. You know, that I think that I remember when Alex White's, I think Into Charybdis was the first of the Titan novels that really started playing with that stuff. And like getting really excited because like I think that was the first novel where the black goo is really discussed at length. And you know, it's like, oh well, this gives us a lot more paints in the paint, you know, in the box, you know, that we can use. So that, I mean, all of that, I think, you know, it's a soup, and hopefully it works. And it sounds like for you it did, and that makes me very happy. There, I will say, just apropos of, you know, writing in your favorite fandom is a very nerve-wracking experience, or at least it was for me. Because on the one hand, it's a dream come true, but on the other hand, it's like you don't want to be the guy who messes it up.
Absolutely fair enough. And, you know, there are so many different kinds of Alien fans, too. Some will just openly embrace anything Prometheus and Alien Covenant related. Others will want to push it away. I've seen and noticed the same with authors, too. Like some will very much embrace mostly the first two films, and in terms of any kind of plot points or even just general atmosphere of the story, but some are a little hesitant to get into to the Prometheus Covenant sandbox, which I always appreciate. And there were certain connections to Alien Covenant specifically that I appreciate, which I guess I can't get into too much. But one thing I did want to ask about on the same kind of topic here, how much would location have to do with that? Because again, not to give too much away, but we do have a colony setting here, but it's not necessarily what you may expect. There are a number of moments out in the wilderness, and I felt kind of a flashback to Covenant, where we have these few moments, but not really that many that are kind of like out in the woods, where they do find David's ship. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to have action take place here, which never really happens. Was that something that inspired your location of this story, or how do you use location to your advantage?
Yeah, I think so. I think also if you look at my my other books, there's sort of this fascination with you know, the dark woods, you know, almost like a fairy tale location, right? Like where strange things happen. I think it appears in, well, with this, my third novel, and in Solomon Kane, my fourth, all four of my novels to date, and the fifth one that I'm writing right now. So I think that's part of it, but I think that is part of why I loved that movie so much, because it gave us it broadened the canvas again. You know, it it gave us that forested planet that I thought was a really interesting location, and that I was interested in playing with um, as well. Because LV-426, of course, in the first two movies, even after the colonizers get there, it's still just a windy, miserable, it's just they don't have to wear spacesuits to be outside anymore. It still sucks. Like nobody would want to live there. Or I forget the name of the planet that they're on in Romulus, but that also, like, where there's no sunlight, um, like just absolutely brutal. And it's like, well, what if there's, some different, you know, um, landscapes. And that was one thing that I thought was really interesting about Alien Earth, is that it also plays with some different. It also does the woods, but also some other, like waterfront and futuristic cities and stuff. Like it really. I always appreciate it, I guess, when when the alien filmmakers or TV makers, as the case may be, like broaden the scope a bit and give us, put the xenomorph in a new place, or just give us another glimpse of the world that doesn't look completely like it. Of course, I haven't done that here. I just went back to Covenant's box, but I had a lot of fun with that setting. And like you said, like it gave me a lot of opportunities to seed in like iconic images from the alien mythos, but maybe in ways that we hadn't quite seen before. But it also gave me a good excuse to keep the monster at the periphery until I was ready for it to show up in full. Like it made a great stage dressing to hide the creature.
Well, separate to that, we do have, as you mentioned, the logs of Corinth Bloch, who, I mean, I can tell you most certainly we've never had anything quite like this in an alien story. A lot of insight into, I don't know, the art world of the future, I guess. And, we have the growth of an artist, the ins and outs of the gallery shows, the inner artist politics, all that. Oh, now, was this something you researched, or is any of this autobiographical? Where did all of this come from?
I mean, it's sort of pieced together, like some of the, as far as like where he grows up and all of that, like I don't remember the exact planets that I picked, but a lot of the information, like as far as where it's located in the galaxy, comes from the role-playing game. And there's some vague language about, I think, the particular region where he's growing up. Once after we first meet him, he's in one place and then he's relocated to a more affluent place. And I think there's some language in the role-playing game about like the affluent homes there. So that seemed like a cushy place for an artist. And I'm not a painter, but I used to be married to one. And so like I had a little bit of passing familiarity with the process, watching her work, and spending time going to gallery showings and things like that, like of other students, but also just, exhibits that would come to the city, in Fort Worth or Dallas. And also like just sort of translating my own experiences, at the Iowa Writers Workshop where I went to grad school, which is a very, and this isn't me trying to toot my own horn, it's trying to explain. It's a very prestigious program. Like a lot of editors and agents from New York come out to visit the students at that program and try to sign them before they graduate, because the program is sort of famous for producing like great writers. Philip Roth used to teach there, Kurt Vonnegut used to teach there, John Irving graduated from there, Raymond Carver, a lot of very famous literary writers came out of there. And so like I got to rub elbows with a lot of people. I was sort of the odd horror writer at the this program that's sort of famed for like mainstream literary realist fiction. And but like I got to rub elbows with sort of the the mighty I took classes with Pulitzer Prize winners, and we got to hear their stories about the different places they've gone and the types of personalities you meet. So I think a lot of that translated in, and a lot of his development as an artist doesn't reflect in specificity of detail my own development as a writer, but sort of that sense of catching a bug when you're young and sort of realizing this is what I'm supposed to be and kind of chasing that across a lifetime, all of that. But a lot of it is just authorial invention, putting the pieces together about like, okay, well, if this happened to him here, what would he think about that? Where would that go? And, I had an end goal in mind about like, how does he end up on this planet where the chariot crew have to come get him? And so it was, how do we get from the little kid, growing up on the mining colony to the reclusive artist, who's apparently gone crazy and gone to a quarantined planet, and sort of working the thread between the two and really exploring it, just letting it was, I mean, you probably hear this cliche when you listen to writers, but if you're lucky, the characters kind of start to talk to you and it becomes more like you're listening to them than telling them what to say. And so, there were things in the book, of course, I can't discuss now, but maybe if we stop recording, I could tell you, surprised me. Corinth took on a life of his own, and I was lucky in that respect. Like, he became a very vivid, animating presence that drove that part of the story for me, and took me places I was not expecting. But I think also the dance Corinth and I did as I wrote his story was trying to make sure that there were certain dots I was connecting, which again, like, are kind of spoilers, but that tie the larger alien saga together in some interesting ways that I hadn't seen before. Bringing in some deep cut references to other tie-in books, but also like things from the movies, so it was sort of an interesting, I guess, dance. It's like he's telling me his story and I'm like, okay, but don't forget, we still have to figure out this, and this. And he's like, okay, here's how I did it, I don't know. That probably sounds like nonsense, but that's kind of how it felt on the good days.
It is tricky, though. I mean, there's a lot I want to bring up and kind of pick your brain about, but it would be such spoiler territory. But there were definitely moments where I thought, wow, they're really going back to this. I'm completely surprised in the best possible kind of way. But I'll push aside the spoilers for now. And I don't want to give too much away, but I'll say this about the book. It seems to me that there is, how do I word this carefully? There's possibly some unfinished business with certain characters. Are you at all considering a follow-up to this novel?
I would be very happy to do another story with the threads, let us say, that are left dangling a bit here. And I have made that clear to Titan, and I would encourage any readers who are interested, if you like the book, tell your friends. Like, the more it sells, the better. I had an absolute blast working with them, and I have ideas for at least a couple more. Not all in the same, like, one, a couple are just sort of other ideas that didn't make it into this book, but I would be very happy to get to tell a little bit more of this story if I could. That would be very exciting to me, but there's nothing's in stone, no contract yet. But I would be happy to revisit this world. And for the book to do well enough that I know the fans would be excited about seeing more of this story.
One last question that hopefully will be fun. Not to put any pressure on your answer, but let's say that Disney decides to make a new Alien series, but this time it's not like Alien Earth. It's an anthology series where they go about adapting the Alien novels for each episode. Are there any actors or actresses you would have in mind to play the characters you wrote?
It's funny what popped into my head immediately for Corinth Bloch would not be usable because he's already been in an Alien movie, which is Guy Pearce, but like not old man makeup Guy Pearce, like, but sort of that, very, well put together older gentleman, like who's just super handsome and charismatic, but also has a touch of crazy, just behind the eyes. I'm trying to think who would I cast? It's a really good question. I don't know. This is something I am not great with in my original fiction either. People will ask me to like cast the movie of The Dissonance, and I'm like, oh gosh, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what I've watched recently that it really, who might make a really good one. I love Kate Siegel, who is in pretty much all of the Mike Flanagan Netflix horror shows. She was in Haunting of Hill House and Midnight Mass, and I absolutely love her.
Yeah.
And I think she'd be a great Captain Goodwin. I think she's got that perfect mix of like toughness and vulnerability that sort of the classic archetypal alien heroine needs to have, right? But yeah, who would for Bloch? That's a that's a little tougher. You know what? I'll pull another Mike Flanagan favorite. Bruce Greenwood might be really good.
Excellent. These are. I did not prepare you for these questions, by the way. These are very good answers, though.
Oh, thank you.
But I won't ask you to guess the entire thing. Especially, I think we didn't even mention Compton, but that might be. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll leave Compton hanging. Let's say.
Yeah.
Leave that a mystery. So anyone who's interested in the book, you'll find all about Compton when the time comes. But I did lie to you. I have one more question.
Oh no, please.
Just because whenever I talk to anyone involved with alien novels or anything by relation, I just have to know about one certain thing. And you mentioned it earlier. You mentioned you kind of had a struggle with it, but then an ultimate acceptance and love for it, which makes me want to hear more. What are your opinions on Alien 3?
I think that Alien 3 is, in both of its officially available versions, it feels like an unfinished movie that has moments, even stretches of true greatness. I feel like the last act of that movie is incredibly powerful. And I'm referring specifically to the theatrical version, which of course ends with the Queen chest burster. Like, that's one thing I really hate about the assembly cut or whatever the official title is, is that Ripley just falls into the flames. Like, I love the alien actually bursting and her like holding on to it so it can't get out as she goes down. I think that I'm going to say something kind of controversial. I think that a lot of people, I'm going to get so much trouble for this. I think a lot of people who think of themselves as fans of the Alien franchise are really more fans of the movie Aliens. And I think that Alien 3 is a good litmus test because I think that it really harkens back more to the spirit of the original than Aliens does, personally. And again, this is just my opinion. Please don't write me any angry letters. And I feel the same way about Covenant, actually. I feel like Covenant also doubles back to that meanness that's underlying the world of the original Alien. So I love it. I do love it. I do think it's flawed. I do wish that the production had been a little less troubled, that David Fincher hadn't disavowed it, that we'd gotten the version of the film that he really wanted to put on screen. And I right before we started recording, I was actually watching your video about a more recent cut of the film, that just the legacy
The
cut,
legacy cut, yeah.
and which I had not been aware of, and I'm really curious to check this out because I don't know, it's a film that I come back to over and over again, and I'm glad it exists. But it does feel shaggier than almost any other Alien movie, not counting the Aliens versus Predator movies, which I would. But it does feel like a great unfinished symphony, even in its more supposedly complete version. To me, I don't know. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I certainly would. And it's just such a special movie to me. Warts and all, flaws and all, that there's something in there that's true greatness to me. I'll always defend it.
And I
It's
also
it's
think
great.
the Alan Dean Foster novelization is incredible. It might be my favorite of his novelizations.
Oh, and I love Foster's novels, and his adaptations are great. And I especially loved his original novel, uh, Alien Covenant Origins. I thought
Me too.
that was great. It was absolutely great. One
Yes, and fans of that book should definitely check out this book. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh yeah, and fans of any of the novels that have, Titan's been just doing such a great job finding all of these unique voices, including your own, and telling all these unique stories. Never has it felt repetitive to me. They're always finding something different, which I appreciate, because we could end up having, the same, oh, it's lost on loose on a spaceship and running around and killing people. But very solidly for the last decade and a half, I guess the Titans really been just bringing out these great books, and I'm very happy to have a chance to speak with you and kind of get a peek behind that curtain. And just in general, I have to thank you very much for joining me today. I truly appreciate it. It was truly a pleasure, and I hope people check out the book. It's not out just yet. It should be available. When is it?
November 18th.
November 18th. So look for it where all good books are sold. Check out more from Shaun on ShaunHamill.com. Anything else we should know about Shaun?
No, just check out the book, and if you like it, find me on social media. I'm in all the usual places, and I'd love to hear from you as long as you're nice. And thank you, Derek, so much for having me. You're the first person I've really gotten to talk to who's read the book, and so this was such a great way to sort of start the process of the book coming out in the world. So thank you so much.
Well, it's my pleasure. And the second I hit stop on record, please let's go into spoilers and just bang all those out. And
Okay.
we won't, maybe we'll share them at a later time. I don't know. But anyway, thank you very much for being here today. And before we go, would you like to join me in a Stay Frosty to the audience?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. How does this work?
We'll both say Stay Frosty at the same time. We'll do a countdown.
Okay.
And everyone will feel good, I hope. So 3, 2, 1. Stay frosty.